Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. At the time of recording this session with my guest star, I was expecting this to be just one video. However, we talked about so many things that I just don't want to get cut from the video. I really think we talked about very important topics that some people need to hear. It needs to be a conversation in the Black community. For that reason, I've split this video into two parts. So, this is part one. I hope to see you for part two. Enjoy the video, guys. Hello, guys. Welcome to the ADHD Rants podcast. I am your host, Loser Goddess. If you're joining us over on the YouTube channel, you will see I have a special guest today. If you're not on the YouTube channel, I'm actually talking to myself. I'm crazy. No. No. No, but on today I have SwaDaGentleman. Feel
Hey,
free to introduce yourself. Tell a little bit about yourself, Swa.
what's going on? I'm SwaDaGentleman, as she said. I'm originally from Oakland, California, relocated to Kansas City, Missouri, by way of Las Vegas. Most of you know me. If you don't, I'm on TikTok, and my sir nickname is the Ratchet Green Ranger. My content comprises of myself is as if I was the Mighty Morphin Power Ranger, the Green Ranger. I also talk about mental health. I also do open verse challenges as I am a rapper, and I also make beats. Have an associate's degree in psychology, and I promote taking care of your mental health, talking about your mental health, as well as just being true to who you are.
Thank you so much for that, Swa. So, of course, one of the reasons I connected with Swa on and the topic of today's podcast is going to be parental trauma. And so, like Swa said earlier, he talks a lot about mental health, a topic that I feel is very, very, very underrated in the Black community. But that is a topic for another day. That is the topic for another day.
For another day.
Today we'll be specifically going over parental trauma because after seeing some videos that Swa has posted. Actually, Swa, one of the videos that really attracted to me to some of your content was you cutting off your mom. Because I want to say not too long before that, I had just recently cut off my mother. And
Okay.
so, whenever I saw that and seeing a person of color doing that after hearing, 30 million times over and over and over again, that's still your mother. And it's one thing to hear it from family. It's not that that's an excuse, but that's one thing. And it's another thing to consistently hear it from total strangers that didn't even try to attempt to find out why I possibly cut off my mother. Like,
Right.
that is not an easy thing to do. So that was something that definitely attracted me to your content, was seeing that, because it was something that I related to, and it just felt good to see somebody, especially another person of color, another Black person, um cut off their parent in order to, protect their peace, protect their mental health, and
Yeah.
try to take steps to be a better person. Um,
Right.
so,
I
so,
appreciate that. Thank you.
so I do have a question. Cause what parents were in your life? Was it both of your parents, or was it just your mom?
So my story is a little bit skewed a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously my mom gave birth to me, but I didn't live with both of my parents full time. From the moment that I was born, I was bounced around. Like when I was like a baby, it was multiple people that took care of me from like different times. I want to say within months of me being born in like 86. And so it was different people that had me. It was my mom, it was auntie on her side, and then it was my dad a little bit. But the auntie that took custody of me until the time I was about 4 years old or 3 years old was my dad's sister. That's my other aunt. She took care of me, and I found out recently that she was working two jobs to not only put myself but a cousin of mine, which is her daughter, through daycare. in the 80s, and she told me how expensive daycare was back in the 80s in San Francisco, California, which was $800 a month for two kids for daycare. I was like, dang, even back then
Yeah.
that's expensive. So my dad
Yep.
was never in my life. Um, I'm not going to say he was just completely absent. He was there in parts, but he was never a consistent factor. So I've been bounced around between paternal aunt to my mom from ages like 3 to 4 to 12, going on 13. Then from 13 to 17, I lived with a great aunt, my maternal great aunt, and I've mentioned this on my in my content as well. So I didn't grow up being raised by, just my mom throughout the entire, like, from birth to 18. I was bounced around between birth to 18 years old. So it's a little bit different than other people would expect or
Hmm.
would assume.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that on some level. So, a little bit of a background about me. I never lived with both of my biological parents full time.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was my biological mother gave birth to me and left me with my grandmother. That's the person that I will be referring to as my mom.
Okay.
Just because I grew up with her. I know but don't know my biological mom. We didn't really talk much, but
Right.
she left me with my grandmother. That's
Right.
who
Because
had me. She
mm-hmm.
never had any type of legal custody over me or anything, because technically speaking, my dad was still in the picture. He was and he wasn't. So at some point, my grandmother and my dad got married, and so I was living with them. They got divorced, and because again, technically that's my dad, he took me because my grandmother had no legal say to keep me there. And when this happened, I want to say I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, so I didn't know. I didn't know
Dang.
what was. I didn't know, and at this point, and mind you, at this point when the divorce happened, I did not know she was my grandmother. At this point, I did not know. And so eventually he took me. I would cry a lot because I missed her. And it wasn't even just that I missed her, I just missed what I thought was a healthy family at one point. And he just dropped the bomb on me one day that that's not even my real mom.
Mm, damn.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question?
Uh-huh.
How old were you when he dropped that bombshell on you? Because it just seems like with our community, they drop bombshells on us in terms of bad news, like when we're children, and they expect
Mm-hmm.
for us to just be okay with it.
Yeah, so I was about 10 or 11 because it wasn't that long after they had separated that he told me. Because I
Okay.
had just moved in with him and it wasn't his wife yet, but his new fiance, girlfriend, whatever. And she had two kids and we were living with them. We were all living together. And at
Okay.
one point I would go on weekends my mom to visit her and then of course come back home. And so I would say how I missed her, and then he dropped that bombshell on me, and that just it created a lot of confusion for me. And then eventually, my biological mother came into the picture to let me know, like, yeah, what they're saying is true. I'm actually your mother, and blah blah blah. So that was a whole mess. That was very hard to process
I
at
can imagine.
at 10, 11 years. It was very hard to process. But with that, my dad does not have stable relationships, and I realized this a lot more as I got older. And so anytime he had a falling out with whoever he was married to at the time or whoever he was dating to or engaged to at the time, he would send me back to live with my mom. It was pretty bad. There was one school year, I think it was 5th grade, where I went to 3 different schools.
Mhm.
In one year.
I can relate to going to multiple different elementary schools.
Yeah.
That just made me think like, dang, I went through that as well.
Yeah, it was looking back on it, it's like, man, that was not a healthy environment. But growing up, you want your parents' approval. You want things to be happy, things like that. And so
Right.
it's just a lot. A lot happened before I even got to middle school. A lot
Right.
went on. It was, yeah, it was a very, very interesting time. So I very much relate to you saying that you were bounced around a lot, because definitely so was I, because of the fact that my dad would take me, and what I like to say is he basically used me as a token, because he had a kid, maybe somebody who he was dating or engaged to, whatever. At the time my dad was engaged a lot, by the way.
Right.
Had a kid, wanted us to meet, wanted us to get along, stuff like that. It happened a lot. And then the second they start falling out, he would send me back to live with my mom. And it was just,
It was a pattern.
it was a pattern. 100% a pattern. 100%.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. So my upbringing was definitely, it was very rough, because something that affects me even still to this day is growing up I never saw a healthy relationship. I never saw it. And so my mom, because it's something I'm willing to recognize with my mother, she went through a lot. I'm not
Hmm.
giving her an excuse of how she treated me, but she went through a lot. And so for that reason, she acted a certain way. She's very stubborn. Things have to go her way. She wants to be the one in control. I will recognize that she has been through a lot, but that does not give excuse for how she treats people.
Right. I
And
completely agree.
hmm and so for my upbringing, I've had to unlearn so much stuff that I either witnessed in childhood or learned in childhood, and it's just it was it's still a process. It's still to this day a process, because there's a
Right.
lot of toxic things that I'm sure even you witnessed, and it's just
Yeah.
when you're trying to be a healthier person, it's rough. It's
Right.
very
I
rough.
get you. And
Hmm.
for me, a lot of the stuff that I've probably witnessed from my mom in like those formative ages, I probably didn't realize that they were toxic. And with me and my parental trauma, the ones that stuck out to me obviously come from my adulthood, but I had to find out from a cousin of mine some of the other stuff that my mother was doing, like behind the scenes, like when I was a kid and stuff like that. And then that made me was like, oh wow, like that's you really just doing all this messed up stuff. And then it affects me because, you know, you potentially have family members look at you sideways as if you're condoning whatever your mom is doing, but you have no idea what your mom is doing.
Something I am realizing more and more, because realistically, and why mental health needs to be more of a topic in the Black community, is a lot of us have similar experiences. So
Yeah.
something I'm realizing more and more is, for example, with my mom. Of course, I was a kid at the time, so I thought whatever of it. She did tell me, but I was like, whatever. She put bills in my name. And yep.
Hold
Yeah.
up. Hold up. Hold up. Why is that a thing with us?
Mhm.
You asked
Yes.
me from 5 years old with a damn
Yep.
cable bill in your name. Hold up.
hmm And I'll
Because
never
I was like,
forget. She asked me if it was okay for her to put a bill in my name. When the first time this happened, I want to say I was maybe 8 years old. So I had no clue what I was saying yes to. Not a
why
clue.
you just doing what your parents tell you. Then you look years later and your name is attached to credit. Your credit is already messed up, and for accounts that
Mhm.
you had since 1970 or not 1970, but like 1998 or something. You know, like I did that one time. Looked up, just Google searched my name, and then there my name is attached to addresses in different parts of California that I
Mhm.
ain't never been to. I ain't gonna say never been to, but that I have never physically been in. Like I was like, this address is weird.
Mhm.
And then I confront my mom about it, and she lied about it. Like, uh huh.
Yeah, so
as if I wouldn't randomly Google search my own self one day just to see if there's anything wild out there about me, especially when it comes to credit and you want to buy cars or house or even something as simple as a cell phone from T-Mobile.
yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that is an experience I'm seeing a good portion of us went through.
Right,
A good portion.
and that experience has been like a part of our community for decades, and it's like you hear
Mhm.
comedians joke about it time to time. Like I remember in the Kings of Comedy DVD, DL Hughley was talking about it, like putting stuff in the kids. I'm like, dang, but then again, that goes to financial irresponsibility, because you're setting your child up for failure as soon as they turn
Mhm.
18 and as soon as they start learning about credit and how to manage credit and what boosts your credit score and what lowers your credit score. So by the time they enter adulthood, they don't have a standing chance, because there's about 5 accounts in their names since they were
Mhm.
um children. That's crazy to
And
me.
and then the black community, we already have enough to fight against. So
Right.
having all this extra stuff on it, it's not it's not helping.
It's
It's
not.
yeah. So that woo, yeah, that is again, that one is definitely another topic for another day because that's something
Right.
I it's crazy how common that is. It truly is crazy how common that it is just at this point standard practice and it needs to be well one there really needs to be a better vetting for credit because obviously some 8-year-old did not open this account. Like why is there
Right.
not a better verification process for this? Like
Right. That's
clearly
for real.
so
That's on the onuses of the companies too. Like,
mhm
wait a minute, this person has had this account since when, and they were how? Oh no, just delete the whole account.
right?
But yeah, but that I do agree with the things the way they are in terms of credit and stuff like that, and all these applications to
Mhm.
actually check your credit before seeing if you're eligible for something. There is no excuse of why still in this day black parents are putting things in their children's names. Nah, and it shouldn't just be because well my mama did it, so nah, don't do that, because you want if you really want your children to have a fighting chance, and knowing that we have things to deal with once we leave the home in terms of racism and discrimination in every aspect, that's putting stuff in your children's name is obviously a setup for failure. So that's something that's definitely got to stop.
It's not, especially because I'm gonna segue into something else. So I have a question. Were you brought up in religious conditions? Because I 100% was, and I know a good portion of the black community was.
So for me, and since I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, like I my relationship with religion is a little bit different, because I went to church, but it wasn't like church was forced on me. Like,
Mhm.
no, I noticed that, like, I went to church, and church felt like more of a tradition. Is I just always thought of it of, oh, that's what us black folks do. We go to church every Sunday. And then I got older, and then I started learning about the dark part of Christianity and things of that nature. And like so like maybe like 10 years ago, like I kind of started silently deconstructing, and it wasn't because of church hurt or like I had church trauma from the churches that I went to. The churches that I went to, I'm gonna be honest, from my experience, they were filled with like positive people. But at the same time, when I sit down and I examine Christianity and I see, like, even though it's a religion supposed to love thy neighbor and honor thy mother and father, but I'm seeing people use Christianity um in a toxic, mean spirited way, attacking groups of people that are not Christ-like. And so my spiritual practice are more spiritual, on the lines of leaning into Buddhism, and leaning and learning about Buddhism and what Buddhism is really like, because I've had some I've had some spiritual lessons into listening to like the Bodhisattva a couple of years ago. So I'm really interested in like the path of Buddha as it pertains to the path of enlightenment. You know.
That's actually really cool. I do go more down a spiritual level these days. I personally I'm just not a fan of organized religion.
Right.
But something that that shocks people all the time, whenever I tell people I grew up a Jehovah Witness.
Mm.
And so I have a few experiences within church because again, with my mom and my dad, they were Jehovah Witnesses, and then whoever my dad was dating, engaged to, whatever at the time. They typically were not Jehovah Witnesses. They just went to standard church. But
Right.
but I grew up a Jehovah Witness, and I don't know if you've ever read into it or practiced into it, but it's very interesting religion. There are a lot of things
Yeah,
I would.
I've had a couple of friends that are Jehovah's Witnesses, and they told me that, and maybe you can confirm this for me. They said, as Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't celebrate your own birthday.
Nope. So I had one birthday ever growing up that I do not remember, which was my first birthday.
Oh wow.
That was before my family converted to being Jehovah Witnesses, and the only reason why I even know it existed is because there were pictures taken.
Right, I
That
got
is
you.
the only reason that I even know it existed. But yeah, you can't celebrate birthdays. They call it you can't celebrate man-made holidays. So like Valentine's Day. Um, what's another one? Thanksgiving, stuff
Mother's,
like that.
I was gonna say Mother's Day and Father's Day. Would those be considered man-made holidays?
Yes, they would. I was not
Oh
allowed to
dang it.
celebrate those either. They had a certain outlook, and I can't say I can kind of understand where some of these are coming from, but also at the same time, it's just like I personally I would not want to be associated with with being a Jehovah Witness anymore, because it's
I
just
got you.
like they did not believe in, like for example, my mom, she was very much into unicorns. Whenever I was
Hmm.
growing up, she loved unicorns. Well, she had to give them up whenever she converted because it was considered false idols, I guess, which I did not understand because she's not worshiping them, but but they were
I'm
considered
trying to
false
understand
idols.
that too. Like, wait a minute. A unicorn is a magical being. Everybody loves unicorns. You gotta give them. No, man. Oh,
And then
and I
of
just.
course and then of course I was one of those that went door to door
Oh no, with the
preaching.
watchtower.
Yep, yep.
Oh no, not with the
And
watchtower.
yes, and so in the Jehovah Witness world, I can't say necessarily that I had a absolutely horrendous experience. It's just more the when I got older, I learned about it. I just don't want to be associated with it, because
Right,
whenever I was younger, it was just more of it seemed like you did not ask questions. That was just not something you did. You don't question it. This is the word, and which is how a lot of religion is, but it's just and it was very monotone because you go to a black church. I remember my first time going to a black church, I was thrown back because you at Jehovah
clapping
Witness
and
church,
jumping and shouting.
yes, at a Jehovah Witness church, it's just only God and like you're just singing like
Right,
that. Like and that's what I was used to. It was a very interesting experience. And so we all go to some type of place of worship on Sunday. I feel like that's something pretty much all of us have in common except maybe a couple of religions. Um
right.
we called it the hall. Don't ask me why. But we called it the hall, so we went to the hall on Sunday. Um, Other churches typically had Bible study on Wednesday. We had it on Thursday,
Mm.
and so it was just a very interesting, and it was also interesting in an experience of. I really don't think children should be talking about religion. I'm not going to lie to you. And the reason why I say this is I remember that starting so many arguments with friends whenever I was like 6. And it's just like, really, none of us have no clue what we're saying.
Right.
Like,
We're
truly,
just
none of us have no clue. We're just repeating what our parents told us. And that's
right.
that's mainly it. And I remember that started so many, because I remember, Because in Jehovah Witness world, we don't believe in heaven or hell is a. I said we. I'm not part of that anymore. They don't believe in you go to heaven or hell. They Jehovah Witnesses believe that one day the earth is going to be destroyed and reborn, and then there's going to be paradise on earth, and those who have lived a pure life will be resurrected. That is what
Mm.
Jehovah Witnesses believe, whereas some other religions believe in heaven or hell, reincarnation, things like that. And
Right.
that stuff started all kinds of arguments because it's just like, well, if you don't read the Bible, you're gonna go to hell, and I would be like, well, hell doesn't exist, so or like not that it doesn't
Right.
exist, like hell, we don't go to hell or stuff like that. There's already people there in hell. That's where they belong, but we stay on earth, stuff like that. And it's just again, we're kids.
Exactly.
Kids, we don't actually know what we're saying, but it definitely again, it's a type of religion where you don't ask questions. You don't question your parents. There's not a whole lot of freedom. You're not allowed to have boyfriend and girlfriend, which there's actually quite a few religions that are like that. You can only be really good friends in the marriage, which is interesting. So it's just all those type of teachings my mom took and also put it in a parental environment, and it's not healthy. A lot of the stuff that was being taught there, it's not healthy to go from good friends to a marriage. Like it's just not. That's not you
Right.
actually getting to know the person. That's just not healthy. But
Like, where's the boyfriend and girlfriend stage? Like, good
mm,
friends, and now I pronounce you man. How does that work?
yep. And so in that also, I had a very hard time expressing myself growing up. And I pretty much didn't do that whenever I lived with my mom because it was just like I would get shut down, or it's just like, oh, you just need to go pray on it, or something like that, or you need to go ask Jehovah for forgiveness. And so I never felt comfortable speaking on anything I was going through, um, especially mental wise, because it was always, I'm too young to be going through that. I'm not praying enough. Um, I haven't been paying attention to what they've been talking about in the hall, things like that.
Mm.
It was, it was very interesting. Did you have, because I know you said you went around a little bit. Were you able to relay your feelings? Did you have a healthy relationship with who you were living with?
Hell no.
Mm, okay.
Because so it with my mom, like I said, from ages 4 to 12, I can't really remember. But
Mhm.
I know there are times where I told my mom about being picked on and stuff like that, and she listened. But all of that changed the year that I turned 13, because how I ended up with the great auntie is my mom went to jail, and I actually remembered the day that they took her to jail because I got dropped off at a mom's friend's house in another part of Oakland, California, where we were living. And then the day after, I got dropped off in Richmond, California, which is where my great auntie lived. And living with her, I wasn't able to express myself. I wasn't able to talk to her about
Mhm.
school. I remember the times that I did try to tell her about things that were happening at high school, things that were happening with teachers, and she just shut me down and listen. I couldn't even get a word
Mhm.
in edgewise.
Yep.
And every time I tried to say a word, I was like, "But shut the fuck up." My auntie would literally look me in my face and tell me to shut the fuck up. And I'm like,
Mhm.
always accusing me and lying about certain things, and so I could never talk to her about anything that I wanted in high school, or even certain things that I wanted to do that were like non-related to school and stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? And I pretty much figured it out. If I want to just have whatever I want to myself, I'll just keep it to myself. And then I was in therapy in high school. I was in therapy all 4 years, and I was just tell my therapist what was going on and stuff like that. And then they asked me, and both of my therapists were POCs. My first therapist was an Asian woman. My second therapist was a black man. So they both asked me, "Do you talk about this at home with your aunt?" I'll say, "No, she won't listen." And they were like, well, try it. I was like, no, she's not going to listen because any like I remember a time where I actually told this story on TikTok. I remember a time where my 17th birthday, I was on punishment because I forgot to give her a progress report that I put in my leather jacket pocket, and I did. I literally forgot it, and I was like, oh snap! I literally forgot it was in there, and I was trying to tell my auntie that I forgot and things of that nature. She just went from 0 to 10,000. You're on punishment, and you can't do this, and whatever events you got, you can forget about going to them. I was like, and I was like, for what? I literally forget. It's just like I don't give a fuck. I swear, when black parents think that you're trying to run game on them, they get increasingly angry. It's like somebody punched them in the face. And I was trying to tell this woman, I forgot. It was an accident. I wasn't trying to
Mm-hmm.
hide it from you, you know?
Mhm.
And then so I've never really been able to express myself to to my aunt in that time period. So I was like, why even bother? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to listen. And the only other person I could express myself to was one of my oldest cousins, because my aunt had two daughters. One cousin was 7 years older than me. The other cousin is 17 years older than me. And so the older cousin, who was married and had a husband at the time, I would be talking to her, and she was a Christian, but she was one of those, like, what you call those, a tele-Christian. Like, she would only go to church on TV, like watching like Joyce
Mm.
Meyer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she would listen though. She would listen, and even the times where I was on punishment and my aunt sent me to her house, it was like a peace, because my cousin didn't yell at me, her husband didn't yell at me, they
Yeah.
weren't physically abusive towards me. And when I was there, I was well nourished, and they made sure that I ate vitamins and my vegetables and things of that nature. But with my aunt, she really didn't listen and didn't care what I have to say. Like, I remember one time we got into an argument where I got into it with a teacher, and I ended up getting in trouble. And I told my aunt everything what had happened. It was like, you're lying. Your teacher's always right. I said, hold up. She said, you always say teacher's always right. She said, yeah, 99% of the time teacher's lie. I said, wait a minute. So if this teacher does something to me and I didn't do anything to this teacher, you mean to tell me they're in the right? Yep. I shut down. I said, bet.
Yep.
And so with Darnell, that's my great aunt's name. Um, with her, it was never I could never freely express myself, and I had to
Mhm.
find other outlets to do that. That's why I took a liking into freestyling and rapping in front of my school with my other aunt that raised me. Her name is Judy. That's my dad's sister. That was probably healthy, but I don't remember because I was actually a little baby, you know. And with my mom, you know, I I got a chance to express myself, but like I said, it was all some covert narcissism stuff going on her end. But it was really mixed, like depending on who I live with. So
Yeah, I can definitely relate to quite a few things that you said, especially, and I feel like probably a good portion of the black community, especially about the lying portion. When I tell you that my mom called me a liar for any little thing, and it's just like, growing up, that was confusing. It's super
right,
confusing because it's just like, I literally forgot I wasn't lying, and I came to you and I told you, like, I'm not lying, but I swear, for every little thing, oh, you were hiding this from me, or like, or it's not, I forgot, I plain would just not know about something. It's just like,
right.
but I'm lying about it. It is,
But
that's
and with us is wild because it's like, and you notice that you're not given an opportunity to explain yourself. And the craziest thing
Mhm.
is like and then they'll go to the family and start making it seem like you're this horrible teenager that's wanting to play
Mhm.
mind games and stuff like
Yep.
that when you're
Uh-huh.
forgetful, you know,
Mhm.
when you're forgetful. And it's like, nah, like I'm 17 years old. I don't know how to play mind games with people. I don't like
Yeah.
it being played with me. So why would I
And
do that?
I'm
And
sorry, and
her
I was sorry, go ahead.
And like, how does it look like you trying to play mind games with a person that was born in like the late 1940s or 50s or whenever that lady was born.
Mhm.
I'm just saying.
And I'm sorry, I would say this 10 toes down. I very much recognize that kids will be kids. So, was I a complete angel growing up? Absolutely not. Nobody is.
Right.
But
Me either.
also, in a family dynamic, bullying, getting together and bullying your children, saying, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that, and ganging up on them, spreading rumors about them, stuff like that in a family dynamic is so weird. It will always be so weird to me.
Right.
Like going and saying, "Oh, they tried to do this to me," and blah blah blah. We're not enemies. Why are you gossiping about me? I'm your child.
Right. And
Like,
that's something that I never understood because I've heard it from other people and it's like, wait a minute, you did this with your mom, right? And then now the whole family like trying to jump bad with
yep.
you or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I take it back. It actually did happen to me. Like me and my mom get into it, and my phone ringing, and it's like, "Oh, you being this? I hear you being disrespectful to your mom." Now, like, I got an auntie trying to come over
Yes.
that threatened to slap the shit out of me. Like, what? Wait a minute. How did we get here? Like,
Mhm.
why do you even know the whole story of why me and my mom argued, or why I yelled at my mom, or do you
Mhm.
just hear her version of it where she's crying wolf and playing a covert narcissist? And I'm like, and this happened when I was 19. I'm like, wait a minute. You're threatening to put hands on a 19-year-old man at this time. So if I react in self-defense, you can't say anything. Yeah, I'm not just going to let you attack me, you know, over something that I didn't do. But then again, what I noticed back at that time, certain older generations of black folks, even though you're a legal adult, they're still going to treat you as like a kid. Like,
Yep.
okay, yeah, you in your mama's house, but you still a kid. That don't mean you grown. Legally, I'm an adult. Yeah, I just live here, but at the same time, I'm not going to allow my mother to disrespect me. Like,
Mhm.
you can't teach a child to stand up for themselves, and then it's wrong the moment they have to stand up against you.
Mhm. And I especially hated it when it's just like there were so many occasions where I'm talking to my mom, we're arguing, we're going back and forth, and she knew damn well I said something that was correct. She knew I
Mm-hmm.
said something that was right. And after that it's go to your room, you're on punishment, or she whoops me. Like she has no rebuttal. She knew I was right in that moment. But a child can never be right. It was always you're a child, stay in a child's place. And that was it. Every single time. And it was
I swear our
it
family is
creates
classic for saying that.
sorry.
I swear.
But it's just like it does not create a healthy mindset for whenever they get older. Cuz for a
Right.
while whenever I got older and I was on my own and things like that, I had a hard time questioning other people, which is a bad thing. That is not a good thing. I have gotten a lot better at being a lot more outspoken, but because of the environment that I grew up in, I felt that I was not allowed to question things. And so it it definitely there were a lot of things I had to unlearn from my childhood because of just very toxic things that I went through, I witnessed, etc., whatever. But
Right.
I do have a question. So we probably might have had different experiences because of course I grew up a girl, you grew up a boy. But
Mm-hmm.
what was it like whenever you were going through puberty at home?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Mhm.
Um, I barely remember puberty.
That's fair. That's honestly valid.
Because because when puberty started, I want to say it started for me around what, like 10, 11. So by that time, I'm living with my mom, and then into my high school years, I'm living with my great aunt. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I was just going through the motions of, in a situation where it's supposed to be temporary became permanent for the time. I'm
Yeah.
just dealing with that. I forget I'm a teenager and dealing with teenage hormones, and my voice
Mm-hmm.
my voice didn't really get that deep. Um, and I always make this joke about this as it pertains to puberty. I was like, maybe the puberty, the part where I'm supposed to get the deep voice skipped me, but then I'm like, but I was like, wait, not all guys are supposed to have deep voices,
Yeah,
but
no.
I don't remember like what my puberty experiences were because of when it started and when I was coming into it. I mean, um, of course, I had like the stereotypical like to tell a guy the boys have wet
Mhm.
dreams and stuff like that. Of course, I had one of those,
Mhm.
but I don't remember like all of it because I think I was dealing with too much. So,
Yeah. Well,
like,
I
wait,
know.
that was a thing.
Well, I know, like, for example, with my upbringing with puberty is because I started, so I had my first period at age, um, 13, right, literally right at 13. And I
Mm-hmm.
started developing a little bit before that, and then it progressively I kept developing more. And I swear my mom at times acted like that was just the worst sin of the world. It's just
I've heard
she,
I've heard similar stories about like when girls get their periods and stuff like that. Like
hmm.
certain moms act like they're doing something wrong or
Yeah.
they're doing the naughty before they're actually supposed to be doing the naughty.
Yes. I did not lose my virginity until I was well moved out and in my 20s. But my mom was so dead set that I was, inviting people over, having sex under her roof, things like that. And when I tell you on several occasions, she talked about my body, which by the way, I have a very similar, it's very obvious I was going to come into this because my mom, a lot of women in my family do not are very developed. It's very obvious they're developed. So obviously I was going to come into that too. And it's just
Right.
like you shouldn't be wearing certain clothes because we shouldn't be able to see this, and it's just like it felt she always basically wanted to keep me in baggy pants and oversized t-shirts. And especially being at the time this happened in middle school, where
Mm-hmm.
that's where bullying is rampant because it's just like if you're not wearing the right clothes, if your hairstyle isn't great, it's like what is this? What are you wearing? It was rough because she
Right.
she always would call me all kinds of things. She called me a hussy, a Jezebel, because I would try and buy things that I would like, and she would say, "No, that's something sluts would wear," stuff like that. In fact, I remember one instance I went back to school shopping. It was me, her, and a friend of hers. And I saw this
Mm-hmm.
shirt that I liked. And she told me to go try it on. And I went, put it on, and I felt good. I was like, oh, this is such a cute shirt. I think it was some kind of, it was some type of shirt with like a design on it. And I was just so excited about it. And I remember coming out, I was so happy. I was like, "Oh my God, it fits well." Yes, things like that. And she goes, "No, that's not going to work." And I was like, "What's wrong with it?" And she goes, I kid you not. She walked up to me, grabbed the bottom of the shirt, yanked it down, and said, "You were clearly trying to show that this doesn't show cleavage." And I'm just like, that was not even on my mind. And not only that, she had to force it down to get my boobs to show. And her
That
friend
must
was
have been
like,
embarrassing.
yeah, and her friend was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "She's trying to pull something over on me. She's trying to buy this shirt that clearly shows too much, and acting having it up higher than what it's supposed to be, so she can get away with me buying this." And then she goes around walking school with her boobs out, and I'm like, "What?" Like I remember her friend was just in shock. Cause it's just like she literally walked up, grabbed the bottom of it, and yanked it down on me. And to this day, that memory is burned in my head because at the time, again, it was super confusing. Cause my mom kept calling me these things, talking about my breasts were too big. I can't wear jeans that are too tight, that are too form fitting, cause I'll look like a slut. Things like that. She called me all types of things. And it's just like, I just for once don't want to have to wear an oversized shirt and baggy jeans and baggy
Right, I
pants.
got you. I
And
got you.
that's really what the main thing was. This whole she acted like I was trying to wear a mini skirt and a bikini outdoors. Like I swear, like that's how it kept coming across to me, and it's just like no, I want to wear some jeans that fit me, that aren't
Right.
two sizes too big, and an actual cute top that isn't a t-shirt that is also way too big for me. And she just it was that was definitely a very very rough time for me because it was again confusing, and I didn't understand why she made the comment she did. I didn't understand why she consistently talked about my breasts, and it's just like I remember looking at hers like yours are much bigger than mine. I'm very confused. Like, why is it the problem that I have my size? I'm very confused, and it's just like clearly I was gonna go in that route due to genetics.
Right.
Why are you making this such a big thing? And it was just a lot, and I feel like there was what even if for example she did think I was trying to wear more revealing clothes or anything or something like that, there was a much better route she could have gone about that, a much better route, and definitely not, especially because I was the one going to school every day wearing baggy pants and oversized t-shirts. People are telling me I look like a man, things like that. I don't dress girly. I'm the one dealing with that every day.
Right.
It wasn't her. I was the one going to school every day and hearing those comments. And after hearing those comments, yeah, I did not feel girly at all.
Right. Because I would imagine.
hmm So it was that was mainly, I will say, probably about middle school and like maybe the first year or two out of high school. I started when I got to high school. I started being a lot more rebellious, and so I was able to get some clothes that were more comfortable for me. A lot of them were still very loose fitting, but I was able to get some clothes that were more comfortable, that were more girly, to say
Right.
the least. That were more, because I swear to you, I'm not even joking. I feel like sometimes my mom, I wish I still had some of the clothes. I really truly feel like sometimes she went to the boys section and bought me clothes. I honestly do. I honestly and truly feel that way. It was very rough. And because of, situations like that, because of how she would talk down about me, she would swear again that I'm inviting some random people in her house when she's not home and having sex, whatever. I never felt comfortable talking to her about anybody I was interested in, anybody I was dating, anybody I had a crush on. I never felt comfortable because she would immediately jump to, you guys are having sex. And it's just like, well, first of all, I haven't even said hello to this person yet. I literally haven't even spoken to this person yet. And she would immediately jump to, y'all are having sex all the time. And it would again a short resort to name calling, of calling me a Jezebel, calling me a slut, saying that I'm going around laying in some man's bed or stuff like that. And so I never felt comfortable telling her who I was dating at the time or had a crush on, because it was just it did it would lead to some type of lecture that was putting me down. And it
Mm-hmm.
it was it was very annoying to listen to, and I just did not feel like she would ever understand where I'm coming from. And it especially became even more of a thing because I finally came out to my mom when I was 16. At 16 I was bisexual, and I came out to her as that. And I
Okay.
remember and I remember the question she asked was, "Well, how do you feel towards girls? Do you want to be their friends or do you want to jump in the bed with them?" And I remember looking at her like, you're either going too far or not far enough. Like, why is
Right.
it one extreme to the next? You know? Like those
Right.
are two very vastly different things. I remember I came out to her, I told her I was bisexual, I was crying. I forgot what exactly we were talking about. I feel like it had something to do with religion. But
Mhm.
I came out to her, I was crying, and she said that, "Do you want to be friends with them or you want to jump in the bed with them?" And to this day, I don't get what her obsession was with thinking that I was sleeping around. I really
I
don't.
don't know either.
I to this day, yeah, I don't at all.
That's probably gonna be one of the things you're not gonna have an answer to.
Mm-hmm. Were you ever comfortable with sharing anybody you had a crush on or was dating or anything like that?
I only did that one time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually twice. The first time it was around my junior year of high school, and it was just like my first love and stuff like that. I did that with my aunt, and that around that time period because I did well in school. I didn't get suspended. I didn't get any bad grades. Like my aunt was more lenient towards me in this particular time. So this is like one of the peaceful times. I did tell her about the first love I did have. Other than that, I didn't really talk to her about any girl I had a crush on because she wasn't interested. Like or because I couldn't, because if you're already not allowing me to have a conversation or talk to you about things or cut me off at any time, do you really give a fuck about what's going on in my teenage life? Do
Yep.
you?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only time. And then when I ran away to my great grandmother's house, and then when my mom came back to the Bay Area from Fresno, California, which is a city in Central California, I told my mom about a girl that I had a crush on in high school. And I was telling her, and this was funny because I was 17 at the time. And it was the last half of my senior year. I told my mom that my crush was so fine that I drink her bathwater and eat a cupcake off her shoulder.
Wow.
It just came. And the craziest thing is, I seen this crush at my 20-year high school reunion, which was like a few months ago, and um, it was just funny like that. Like my mom, I could tell my mom about crushes and stuff like that because my mom would listen and understand and little stuff like that. But my aunt, especially as a teenager, no, she wouldn't listen. So it was, you know, and that was only the couple of times that I did though. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't really though. I didn't really get the third degree about. Uh, I didn't really get the third degree about girls and stuff like that. Uh, because I wasn't talking to my aunt about any of the girls except for the one. Because like I said, my life is my life, and I at some point I decided to keep my school life, which was basically comprised of academics and personal life, away from my home life, which basically I had none. You know,
Yeah.
so you know, I think I may have told my cousin about it, the cousin that's 7 years older than me, but I really don't remember. Uh, but those are the only two times off the top of my head that I can say that I told like any of my parental figures about any type of crushes on girls that I had.
Yeah. Well, kind of rolling back to some topics we were talking about earlier, because again, going back to what did not feel comfortable with expressing things to my mom, telling my mom about people I was dating, things like that. I my life now is very different. I do have some close relationships with some family members I do feel comfortable sharing things with, but at that
Mm-hmm.
time I felt like I didn't. And so it then resorted to me going online. Which at really any age is not really safe. This was
Right.
mainly in high school that it was happening that I would go online. I would play games. There was a really popular chatting site at one point called Zwinky. I was on there a lot, a lot. Zwinky, and those were the people I spoke with about stuff that was going on in my personal life. They were my outlet. Again, not necessarily healthy, especially because of some of the friends that I was friends with on there. They clearly had some mental stuff going on too, but but that was who I spoke with, and
Mm-hmm.
those were conversations that I took to them about, oh, I'm crushing on this person. or I'm going through this at school, or my mom is doing this, and yada, things like that. And because that ended up being my outlet, I felt like it kind of made it I had to relearn how to talk to people about stuff. Actually, not relearn. I had to learn it in the first place because in face to face, person to person, I was not able to do that at one point.
Right.
And I was only able to do it online, and I've gotten a lot better at it now. But it was a very rough time, especially because for the most part, I'm sure there were some catfishes in there, but for the most part, we were all around the same age. Some 16-year-old, I'm also 16. Some 16-year-old is not going to be able to give me proper therapy
Right.
for what I was going through at the time. They not going to actually have good advice on what to
Right.
say. Like,
Exactly.
so it was an outlet. I don't agree that it was a healthy one, but at least I had some type of outlet. And that was at first the only way I could express myself was online through games that I played, chat sites, things like that. And and what I talked about in these games, I always kept a secret from my mom because again, I did not want her knowing about some stuff. And I'll never forget, I was having a huge vent session with a friend of mine online. And I think it had to do with somebody I was talking to at school. And my mom was very much a person, you don't have privacy, things like that. She'll go through your stuff, no questions, not gonna ask you anything. She'll just randomly go through my things. And I remember one day I was on there and she told me to get up because she wanted to read the chat. Again, I just had a huge vent session and I texted my friend. I was like, hey, send a bunch of messages in the chat until I lag out because we were just
Mhm.
talking about something that I don't want my mom to see. And it wasn't until I got older that I was like, that's not normal. That's not
Right.
normal. I should be able, especially because of the fact that I was talking to complete strangers online, I should be able to talk to my mom about those things. I should be able to, but she never gave me a reason to feel comfortable talking to her. Never.
Right.
So that's what I was doing at the time. And luckily, I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm still here. I was never kidnapped at any point, but I have no doubt I was talking to somebody at some point that I should not have been talking to. I have no doubt in my because I mean, it's the internet. And I was
Right.
14, 15, 16 years old. Like you don't truly actually know who you're talking to. So I have no doubt there were some
Right.
people I was talking to that I should not have been talking to. But I am safe. That's great. But I would not recommend anybody else my age doing that at all.
Right.
But
Because
yeah.
there was a time where the internet wasn't. I mean, the internet ain't a safe place
Mhm.
now, even though with the conception of social media. But back then, like especially like in the late '90s, early 2000s, it was kind of like taboo to have like online friends and talk about
Yep.
things that you're actually going through in
Mhm.
real life. Versus now it's I mean it's common
Yeah,
because
very common.
but
I bet.
yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend it back then.
Yeah. um. But yeah, with that, because again, my mom was very much I had no privacy with her. If she wanted to go through my phone, she had the ability to go through my phone. For that reason, I kept some stuff to phone call conversations. I didn't text a lot.
Hmm.
But um she would go through my room, she would go through my phone, she would look at the browser history on the computer, which by the way, all that does is create a more sneakier kid. Like I said, I would keep things to phone call conversations because I didn't want my mom to find the text about stuff I was talking about. I would figure out how to
Right.
delete cookies, browsing history, things like that. So,
Untraceable.
yes, being strict just creates a sneaky kid. And that's exactly what ended up happening whenever I didn't want my mom to find out certain things. I would try
And I
my
heard
best to tread lightly. and delete things. Or I remember something I did a lot. Oh my god. I would boot up um our computer in safe mode with an internet connection. That way I can browse and she could not find the history. Because once you go out of safe mode, at that time everything was deleted.
Right.
And so I would do that so she would not see some of the stuff that I was looking up, or who I was talking to and things like that. Again, not safe whenever you're talking to at 14, 15, 16 year old, talking to complete strangers on the internet. Not safe.
Right.
But again, my mom did
Not at
not
all.
my mom did not create a safe environment for me to feel safe talking to her about things. And luckily, again, I'm safe. I'm here. I did thankfully never actually give out my address, my physical address, to anybody where I lived. Um, I did give out my phone number a few times to people after talking to them for quite some time. It was mainly, I feel like it was mainly only really I knew girls. And again, these would be phone call conversations. So I know those ones, unless some were very good at throwing their voice. they were they were also fellow girls that were my age. But
Right.
she was very controlling. She was very hands-on. To a point she would have people watching me if I left the house. Somebody would call her and let her know that I left the house. She would have teachers give me updates on what I'm doing in school, and it was a lot. It was a lot. It was like I could not breathe without her knowing.
Right.
Uh, or B, I just could not do anything without permission. I really couldn't. I could not do anything without permission. I never went anywhere with anybody until my senior year because I was scared to ask her. I was super scared to ask her for permission, especially if a boy was involved. I was super scared to ask her for permission. And she always would make it like I'm trying to sneak off and do something, and I wasn't. I'm just trying to I'm a teenager. I'm just trying to have a social life, and that's literally it. I had literally
Right.
never been out with friends, with the exception of like because I was in marching band in high school. We would go hang out in the band hall. And that's
Right.
about it.
All the time.
I did not really have that kind of a social life that you see a lot of teenagers have. Like we'll go to their house, talk for a bit. We'll go out to eat to like CC's Pizza. I did not do any of that until my senior year. Is when I
That
finally. Hmm.
that sounds exactly kind of like my experience in high school because I, with the exception of like a freshman football game, my homecoming, my freshman year, that's the only time I went out. But other than that, I didn't I didn't really go out like that until like my senior year. Like
Hmm.
until like the last half of it. Like when I say the last half, like the last half from like I graduated high school in 2004. From like January of '04 to like when I graduated. And then even after I graduated, because I was still a teenager, I was still,
Hmm.
a minor, so I was still out having fun and stuff like that. Like that's honestly when I could say that like I started actually becoming getting the chance to become a teenager.
Hmm.
I just made me think of that like, oh man, that was some fun times.
I remember the first time, um, really I was able to really sneak somewhere. I went out with somebody, two friends actually. My because this is what happens again. Strict parents create sneaky kids. We all had strict parents. Well, all of our parents knew each other, and we went over to one of the friends' boyfriend's house, apartment house, whatever, one of those,
Right.
for a few hours. But we told my mom that we were going to the park. I feel like that was also the only time I did that in high school because I remember having a lot of anxiety over it. But we went over to his house for several hours and just chilled over there talking and things like that. Nothing. We were having some big old orgy or anything. It was just we were chilling over there, and I had not had that experience Because again, my mom was super strict and I felt like I could not breathe. I couldn't do anything. And I feel like really I only got away with it because if I remember correctly, my mom was she was busy with something that day, if I remember correctly. Because like I said, if I moved, somebody was calling her. Somebody was calling her to let them know what I was doing, whether it was an aunt, a friend of hers. Like how do y'all have cameras everywhere or something? Like like what is going on?
That network of people knowing your mom and knowing where you going.
It was a lot. That was one of the few times, not few times. I think one of the only times I snuck out. Um, Snuck out. We went to a park. The park was next to the apartment complex.
Right.
So we went to his apartment for several hours and just chilled there and talked. It was, I have to say, it was quite an experience for me because it was something I had never done before. It was, at that point, I was so used to if I went anywhere, my mom knew about it. I mean, to a point that I had to tell my mom where I was going, and then when I got to where I was going, I had to call her and let her know that I got there. And
Right.
she would want me to do things like call every hour or something like that, or if I call you, you better pick up, or I'm coming over there immediately type deal. On this particular day, again, I think she was busy. I just don't remember what with. I didn't have to call her every hour, or she wasn't calling and checking up on me. And it was a little liberating. It's like I got freedom for, for a little bit, and it was. I feel like that was really the start of me starting to be truly rebellious because that was I want to say that was the beginning of my senior year because I was friends with Jennifer and Jessica at the time. They were best friends, and they had been best friends well before that. And I knew Jessica and I knew Jennifer separately, but I never really hung out with them together all that much because Jessica, we were in band together, we were marching band together, and Jennifer, we had a couple classes together. Jessica was a year younger than us,
Okay.
and we finally got the chance to all hang out together because we had talked about it several times. And that was one of the occasions we went over to whose boyfriend was it? I think it was Jessica's boyfriend. Or I should say boyfriend. That was a very toxic relationship.
Damn.
Boyfriend with quotations, but high school. some of us some of us have very toxic environments. We don't know what healthy is.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like that was the start of me starting to be a lot more rebellious and especially into me graduating high school. And whenever I got older, my mom was still having curfews for me. Like I had to be home by 9 or 10 o'clock. And at that point, I had a job. And it's just like I was a server at a restaurant. And
Hmm.
I was like, how can I work that late, but I can't be out that late? Oh, we would have arguments about that a lot. A lot.
Yeah, because
Because,
that don't make no sense. Like you got, and the craziest thing is, I kind of dated somebody when I was younger that had a that they had a curfew, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're a legal adult. I'm a legal adult. I live with my mother. You live with your parents. Does that work? You got a curfew and you're a legal adult. And she was like, well, she just shrugged it off, and I'm like, dang.
yep.
Like the only time I ever had a curfew was that last part of me being 17. Other than that, I wasn't allowed outside the house.
Yep. Oh, yeah,
Dang.
I definitely felt that when my mom wasn't home, I wasn't allowed to go outside, and that was very hard because my mom, again, I recognize she did some stuff. She did work long hours and things like that, but I could not go outside until she got home, and so I would hear other kids playing outside, and I was not allowed to go outside and join them until she got home. And that was always very rough for me, specifically when I was living in an apartment complex. When we were in a house, not as much, but an apartment complex, all the kids tend to know each other. And so they'll come
Right.
outside and hang with each other after school, things like that. And
Right.
that was very rough. And then finally, whenever I got like senior year, senior year, I got a curfew, so I was actually allowed to leave the house.
Right.
And that curfew went all the way up until I was like 19 or so, 19, 20ish. And again, we would have back and forth, and then finally we came to the agreement of, well, if you're not home by this time, then you need to stay where you are. And again, strict parents just create sneaky kids. All I did
Right.
was come home at 2 a.m. and pretend like I just walked in at 7 a.m. Yep.
So you probably had to be super quiet for 5 hours and pop
Yep.
and be like, hey ma, what's going on? What breakfast?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Goodness
Yep.
gracious.
There was all kinds of back and forth. But whenever I finally broke away from that and I moved out to be on my own, first of all, I don't know if you had a similar anxiety to me, but I had a lot of anxiety about moving out because my mom consistently told me, oh, those bills are going to hit you and you're going to realize how hard the world is. Nobody's going to care about, your feelings or your opinions and things like that. Bills don't care about any of that. Your job doesn't care about stuff you're going through. Yeah. So I had so much anxiety surrounding moving out. So much.
Mm.
But I needed that freedom so bad. And actually, so shortly before I made the decision, I had had a suicide attempt.
Mm.
And whenever I spoke to three different therapists, I think. Yeah, I believe I spoke to three different therapists. Two were inpatient, one was an outpatient therapist, and they all said the same thing, that I needed to move out. The suicide attempt was technically around something separate, but the environment I was in was not helping. And I think what really made it known that I needed to move out was I had a suicide attempt. Again, I never felt comfortable talking to my mother about things I went through. So she still to this day has no clue why I tried to commit suicide. She has no clue what I was going through mentally. My uncle is the only one that in my family that I told, well, at the time, that I told about what was going on. I went to his house. I walked to his house, by the way. It was like a 45-minute walk from where we lived. I walked to his house crying, bawling my eyes out about something I was going through. He fixed me dinner, and he was like, "Do you want to stay here tonight or do you want to go home?" And he ended up taking me home. And the next day I tried to commit suicide because I was just over it and never told her. Apparently my mom, I didn't witness any of this. My mom called berating him like, you need to tell me what the hell's going on, and he refused to tell her because he's like, if she wants to tell you, she'll tell you, but it sounds like she does not feel comfortable telling you, so I'm not going to tell her business. I of course shared with the therapist what was going on, and when I tell you, she was screaming at one of the therapists, screaming
Yikes.
with by the way, this was group therapy, so there were other people around witnessing this, and I'm used to this, so I'm just sitting there like, I fully expected the therapist to tell her what was going on, like fully
Mm-hmm.
expected. But that therapist, all of them really 10 toes down, refused to tell her. They were like, no, if she wants to tell you, she'll tell you. And it got so bad to a point after the group session broke and all the family members had to leave for the day because we had other activities that we had to do. Therapist came over to me and she was like, are you okay? Because that was a lot. And I want you to know that what we talk about is going to stay between us. At no point is that something that's going to go to your mother. If you feel comfortable talking to her about that, that's completely up to you. But at no point am I going to tell her the things that you told me.
Right.
And it was such, I don't know, it was re- I, I don't know if relief is the right word, but I felt really good at that point because again I'm used to my mom screaming, demanding people tell her things, I'm used to that, and I just kind of sat there like whatever and fully expected my therapist to tell her. And when she refused to tell her, it felt like that was the first time I've seen somebody go to bat for me.
Right.
And
Because you don't expect it because everybody else has basically told your mom what you've been doing from the moment you leave the house.
mhm. Exactly. Exactly. And so that was an experience. And through that, and of course, the therapists, they share notes. it,
Mm-hmm.
it it kept it started the conversation of that I need to get out of the environment that I'm in because it was not helping my mental health.
Right.
And I finally decided, fuck it, I'm doing it. I don't care if these bills are going to hit me hard. I moved into some bed bug, roach infested apartment. Um, it was
Ooh.
absolutely awful, but I still
Mm-hmm.
refuse to go back. Refuse because I had freedom. I didn't have someone yelling at me over nothing. Why didn't you put
And
the
that
food up? Did you ask me to put? I didn't. This ain't even my food. Like
that freedom is priceless.
it really was. It really is. And I have not wanted to go back ever since. Now, did bills hit me? Absolutely. But could my mom have, instead of trying to throw it in my face saying, "Oh, these bills are going to hit you. You're going to realize how hard the world is," actually help me prepare for stuff like that so I could be independent? Yes, she should have 1000% done that. And she did not.
Right.
She did not at all. And I'm so happy I have not had to go back to that experience. And it honestly breaks my heart that some people, they get that taste of freedom and they have to go back because realistically, especially in today's economy, they cannot afford to live on their own.
Right.
Whether it's um unfortunately, I've heard several times people getting laid off from jobs. I'm lucky that I only got laid off once back in 2020. I've been pretty much able to consistently work. Um, whether it's that, whether it's rent just went up and they just can't afford it. I'm so lucky I haven't had to go back into that environment because I truly don't know. And on top of that, my mom was toxic in all kinds of ways. My mom was a
Right.
smoker, and she was a chain smoker, an inside chain smoker. And I would ask her to, smoke outside when we're in the car. Can we please roll the windows down? Because she wanted to smoke with the windows up all the time. And she just made it seem like it was just, I was asking too much. She would crack the window like a half inch, and that was about it. And I would have such a hard time breathing around her smoking. And when I was in a place where my clothes were not surrounded by cigarette smell and could get some relief because I was consistently asked if I smoked, and I was like, "No, I don't smoke actually. I don't."
Right.
It was from my mother. It was relief in so many ways, so many ways. And even though I moved into an
Hold on.
environment but yeah, after I moved out, it was a lot of, it's like a lot within me was getting purged. A lot of anxiety, a lot of feeling like I couldn't do XYZ. A lot
Mm-hmm.
within me got purged and I started to relax a lot more. Anxiety about, coming home and being questioned about where I'd been. Nobody was there. So nobody was there to
And
question me.
and that feeling when you get your first space on your own, it's amazing because like I get that our parents are trying to teach us like adulthood isn't easy, but then again, once you navigate a system of paying your bills and making sure you got money left over after each check, you're fine. You
Hmm.
know, my thing was with adulthood. I just wanted to be out of my great aunt's house, and I just wanted to be away from my. Once I really found out, start seeing my mom's true colors, I just wanted to be on my own, so I
Mm-hmm.
could have my own space and be in my own domain and treat it how I want to treat it and stuff like that. And just the more I start coming into myself, the more I can design my space so it could reflect who I am. That feeling, especially if you came from an environment where you never had peace and you never had a safe space to be, and coming home was like more of a dread than anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you get your own spot, it's something different, versus
Yep.
okay, I got my own spot. All right, back to work. Like, nah, this is mine. This is I can be here. I don't have to worry about being yelled at. I don't have to worry about being talked down to or talked about. Now that I think about it, like your first spot. Everybody say their first car, their first car is their baby, but your first spot, your first apartment, or your first house, that's your baby, because
Yep.
it's there with you for all the adult things that you're going to go through, relationships,
Yep.
job transitions, and friendships and stuff like that, man. So I totally get it.
And not only that, it was my home was now officially my safe space. I
Right.
could actually come home and relax. Because prior to moving out, I didn't really have one. I would go to my room, I would try to make it my safe space, and then my mom would come barging and yelling at me about something, whatever. And so whenever I moved out, it finally became my safe space. And so I moved out at, I think I was 22 when I finally moved out. And again, moved into roach infested, bed bugs,
Right.
just all kinds of crazy stuff happening in that apartment complex. I can hear upstairs when my neighbors were getting busy.
Damn.
Yeah. Yep. I was like, I didn't care. I got my own spot. I got my own place. I
Like
was
you much rather deal with the bed bugs, roaches, and the neighbors doing the naughty versus coming home to no peace. But and that was the same age that I actually moved out to.
Hey guys, that was part one. I really hope to see you guys next week from part two. Again, thank you so much for joining me. This is your host, Loser Goddess, here at the ADHD Rants podcast. I had a special guest today, SwaDaGentleman. Please share this. I really think this needs to be a conversation with the Black community. Please be back next week. Hope to see you soon. Mwah.